Here is a very cool AK variant, one I'm personally fond of. It is a Krebs Custom, or KCI 08, I believe is the model number. It is a Russian-produced AK in the Ishmash factory, and it is very high quality, and it wears some very cool and useful accessories that will help to solve some of those ergonomic problems I talked about in the previous part. One, it wears a proprietary KCI railed forend there. It's wearing some grip panels now. You could easily put a vertical grip, lights, lasers on there. Very helpful. Not really free-floated, I don't think. I could be wrong on that, guys. But still, very useful. By the way, that's a Ranger RD9 knife in the background awaiting review. Yeah, you'll see that coming. Has a Tapco grip on it. Tapco G2 trigger. Proprietary safety mechanism. Our release lever that actuates the opposite side AK safety. Very nice. And a Veltor retractable stock. Now you AR guys be saying, yeah, that's basically an AK that's dressed up like an AR. You're right. It pretty much is. And I like it. However, it still retains that piston design in the heavy 7.62 by 39 caliber, which a lot of dudes dig. I hope to do a separate review on this later. It's tough, though, with my schedule. I got to be honest with you. It's tough even for me to fit this one in, and I'm doing the best I can, as is my mascot, Allie. You can see she's really interested in what's going on. She heard her name. Good girl. She's waiting for her daily run, and yes, I'll fit that in, too. But between now and then, I've got a lot of work to do. Continuing on with the AK versus AR-15 debate. I think we left off talking about the sights, and I'm going to get back to that momentarily. Before I do, I want to show you first some things that I grabbed between when I stopped filming the last part now. And first off, it's these grips for the AR-15. There's another option, Ergo Grip. Very nice. It's a kind of a soft, rubbery feel, but not too tacky, not too rubbery. I think if you get something like a Hogue grip, it grabs onto cloth and it can be problematic. Here's a Bushmaster. I forget what they call this. This is kind of a fatten grip. It's very similar to the stock A2 AR-15 grip. However, it's a little bit wider, and it will fill your hands a little bit better. I think they call it a stowaway grip. I could be off. There's a Tango down option. Excellent grip. Really superior traction on this grip. They have really nice molded in stippling as well. So just a couple more. Yeah, I know there's some AK variants out there too. I'm sorry, I wish I had those as well. Speaking of cool AKs, here's a Vepr AK imported by Robinson Armament in Salt Lake City. Great gun. Again, hope to do a separate review on that one. This one's built on an RPK receiver. You're going to get some extra weight for sure with that, but it also wears a much thicker barrel, which I like for sustained fire. I'm always a big fan of that thicker barrel whenever possible. Okay, situated at the reviewing table. Yeah, nice Vepr. Chunky and heavy, no doubt, but that's a thicker barrel. I'm going to talk about that when we get to weight issues. But like it, RPK receiver, thicker stamped receiver, 50% thicker than a normal AK receiver. Great gun, if you can take the weight. But talking about sights, I'm going to weigh in with this Vepr because I think these have some really nice AK sights on it. Again, I'm kind of at an oblique angle here looking through the viewfinder. One of the criticisms I leveled in the previous parts was the AR sights are superior to an AK's. I'm going to stand by that assertion. I think it's true and well-founded. However, by what margin? That is a fair question. I mean, are like AK sights horrible? No, they're not. And actually, that little groove lining up with the front post is an effective sight picture. The European, by the way, the European variants, I hope you can see this, have a cutout hood. The Mac 90 kind of has a circle hood, kind of like an H&K. So a little bit different sight presentation. But it provides a adequately precise sighting picture. I do think the apertures and the ghost ring system is faster without losing anything in preciseness. One thing I like about the Veltor sight here is, one, the quality of construction. Finely machined, it just looks better. It looks like there's more quality in the sight itself. Moreover, it's easily adjustable for windage, something I don't think the Mac 90s is. I could be off on that, and you can see you just pull and rotate and lock back into position the windage knob. That's a nice feature. I also like how it's realistic in its graduations. See how it's basically going out to 300 meters, and I think pretty much these AKs are graduated in meters. That's realistic. Beyond 300 meters, dude, forget about it, as shown in the ballistics portion of the talking points that you saw earlier. Now, going back to the Mac 90 side, you can see that it's fairly representative of a lot of other AKs in that it is graduated out to, what, 800 meters? I think the thinking with Kalashnikov, and there's a lot of AK variants that do have this, is kind of area suppression. And by that I mean, you're not really shooting for accuracy. A bunch of soldiers might be providing arcing fire into a certain area. And that's kind of goes along the Russian way of fighting, at least back then in the 1950s. So that's interesting. 300, though, much more realistic. And you can see that the machining on that Vepr is a lot better. Now, I've always thought that the sighting radius on an AK is rather short, on the short side, but that's not entirely accurate, because when you measure this distance between the rear blade and the front sight post on a standard AK, you'll come up with about 15 inches for standard length barrels. On M16, M4, AR-15, 16-inch barreled carbine, because they placed that sight so far back to the barrel, it's around 16 inches. So there's really only about an inch difference when you're talking an AK versus AR carbine. Now, if you go to a full-length 20-inch AR, the game changes quite a bit. Now, this one is wearing a scope because it's set up as a kind of an SPR roll. Nice gun, by the way. Hope to do a review on that sometime. There's that MOE grip, by the way, the one I told you about. That's the non-interchangeable Magpul grip. It doesn't have interchangeable back or front straps, but guess what? Most guys will find that it fits them just fine, and it's more cost-effective. Love that grip. But back to the sight radius, this one's going to be a lot different. I believe on the order of 20 inches or so. I don't have my tape measure handy. But that is a long sighting radius. And again, we can see those folding backup iron sights, how they tuck so nicely underneath your optics. This is an SPR 1.5 rail from LaRue. Love that rail. And you're going to have to get a low profile BUIS to do this. This is a PRI brand. Love that. And the gun also wears a PRI folding front sight. Nice setup. Long sight radius, and it's precise. Even if your optics go out, you just pop your quick release levers off the mount and you're ready to rock and roll, guys. So very nice setup. The AK, in other words, does suffer a little bit in terms of sighting radius. It's not a game-changing distance. Basically 1 inch with a carbine. If you're talking a 20-inch AR, then yeah, it's significant. I still like the aperture sighting on the AR. It's just going to be a lot more precise. Couple more points about ergonomics. This again is the Vepr AK, Russian made. Well, not really Russian made. It uses some Russian parts, but it's more than anything made in the United States. And it wears mostly U.S. parts. And again, it's another example of a U.S. spec'd AK, what I like to call them, ones that you can actually modify the grips on, and it can accept detachable, normal capacity magazines. But check out the foregrip on the Vepr. That's nice, huh? Or the forearm. I like that. Much more hand-filling. Long, too, so you have a lot of gripping area. So depending on your arm length, it'll be comfortable. Really no Picatinny rails. You could probably add some. And actually, I see there's some indentations on the bottom. Robinson Armament might have a rail system that you can put on the bottom of that gun. That would be cool. It would add weight, and I'll get to that here in a second. And here's your buttstock, a Robinson Armament, I believe, proprietary buttstock placed on the gun. Oddly, he still went with a very short length of pull, basically the same size as all the other AKs. Not sure why he did that. I wish he would have lengthened it a little bit. You could actually place a butt pad on there to lengthen it out for you, or maybe some plexiglass spacers painted appropriately. I've done that with some guns. Nice pistol grip, too. The reason I'm bringing this up is to show you that there are AK variants out there that have their ergos pretty squared away as they come to you from the factory, in my opinion. in my opinion, is I like a hand-filling grip. I kind of prefer synthetic over wood when I'm talking about a tactical weapon. Call me crazy. And depending on what the POU is for the gun, I like the option of attaching things to the gun. Kind of like this bipod on this LaRue. There's a sideways sling attachment. You got the ergo grip here. On the other side, we're wearing a Streamlight TL2 flashlight. So yeah, the options are nice. Oh, and by the way, in doing all of that, we have free-floated the barrel, which makes it more accurate as well. And for a precision AR-15, that makes a lot of sense in my opinion. Enough on ergos. How about weight? And that is a talking point which you guys know I'm pretty big on. I mean, I talk about it pretty much with everything I review when it's appropriate. And that's because it strikes right to the heart of my standard mobility versus firepower argument. There's no free lunch, guys. If you want more capabilities, you're generally going to carry more weight, generally speaking. Now, I will compare and contrast the weight situations, AK versus AR here in just a second. First off, let's look at this Vepr. With a composite 30-round magazine in place, it has that 50% thicker stamped receiver. It's an RPK-style receiver with extra reinforcement trunnions on it. I might talk to that in my tabletop. And then a nice thick barrel on it. That's going to give you more accuracy, more durability, and more capabilities, perhaps under a sustained fire situation, in my opinion. I like that. But it comes at a penalty, and that penalty is weight. This Vepr, without optics, without any Picatinny rail accessories, just with this sling, composite 30-round mag, weighs a very stout 9.9 pounds. That's heavy. Now, I don't necessarily think that that is representative of most AR or AKs out there, but let me say this. Most AKs have a very thin barrel profile. And let me bring in another AK over here. Hang on. I'm going to use this one. Pop the mag out. The Krebs. The Krebs is very representative of a European AK variant in that it has a very thin barrel. And that's my opinion. I'm not reading this anywhere. I'm not quoting anybody. That's just me. That is a thin barrel, if you ask me, for a 7.62 or 30 caliber diameter round. Very thin. And yet, that's pretty standard for a European-made AK. Nevertheless, of course, this Krebs is a little bit different because it's got so many other things on it, like the Picatinny forend, the top rail, so it's not really indicative of the weight, because this thing weighs 8.8 pounds. Now, a normal AK without all this junk on it, I shouldn't say junk, it's great stuff, but without all the other stuff on it, will weigh on the order of about 7 pounds, give or take some. And that's due in part to the thinner barrel. Now, if we were to look at let's look at a competitor, and I'm talking about barrel width here and how it contributes or hurts your weight situation. I want to come off the tripod. This little Bushmaster right here is a 16-inch barreled bushy, and actually it's more like 17.5 with that phantom flash suppressor placed on it. But guess what? That is a heavy barreled AR. It's not lightweight. Even under the handguard, that sucker is thick. And let me reposition the tripod and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, that's the barrel profile that AR-15 that I just showed you is wearing. That's a 16-inch bushy, and it's wearing a heavy carbine Bushmaster barrel, one of my favorite profiles. I'm not a big fan of super light AR barrels. Sometimes your POU or philosophy of use will make the weight issue critical to your system, and then I can understand why perhaps you would opt for something like this. That's a super light 16-inch Bushmaster barrel. A lot of guys call them pencil barrels. I don't like them. I think they flex too much. They can overheat during rapid fire strings, and if things get really ugly and you've got to go like a lot of mag dumps, this is not the barrel that I want to be wearing. I want something like this that can take the heat and keep on trucking. Now, and I'm going to do a little an aside here, a little detour since we're on the subject of AR-15 barrels. Here's your most popular one you're looking at here. That's the M4 profile barrel. I like the Bushmaster catalog, which we're looking at, because it shows you what they look like under the handguard. Notice how thin the M4 profile barrel is under the handguard. And guys, it's made that way so you could attach an M203 grenade launcher, i.e. military guys. Last time I checked, if you're a civilian, you probably won't be doing that. So here you've opted for that type of barrel thickness and given up some capabilities, in my opinion. I don't like it. The upside, I guess, is it does save some weight. But I'm going to caveat that here in a second. Notice that out of the front sight and gas block, it looks like it's going to be thicker, a standard M4 profile barrel. Not so much. But it does save some weight, but it's thinner under the handguard. I do not prefer it. And that gets back to the issue which I'm driving home now, and that is barrel thickness in regards to weight. And the AK, normally a European version, is going to wear a very thin barrel. Now, that being said, for years, AKs have had this. And again, I'm not the ultimate AK expert, but I haven't heard a ton of complaints about it, truth be told. It's just my own preference. When given an option, I like a little bit heavier barrel for suppressive fire if I ever have to do it. Call me crazy. Now, the Chinese variants, maybe the Polytech and the Mac 90s, kind of like this one here, now sitting forlornly on the floor, has a thicker barrel. I like that. However, it comes at a little bit of a weight penalty. With no optics, this US spec Mac 90 weighs 7.7 pounds. And that's a little bit stout. Let me tell you why I think that's stout. This gun here, I just showed you, that bushy, with an ML3 aim point and LaRue mount. I think I forget which number it is. Look at the annotations maybe. PMAG 20 rounder, retractable stock, full 16-inch barrel, and a small Picatinny rail on the fore end, 7.7 pounds. And that's with that full thickness barrel. The point I'm making is that the AR-15, on terms of barrel width and weight alone, wins the weight battle, in my opinion. You know, and a European AK has that thin barrel. If you're going to go thicker on the barrel, guess what? You're going to have a Vepr, and you're going to be looking at about a 10-pound gun, from what I've seen. So, yeah, and there's other issues that go into the weight argument, and I'll try to cover those. Now, let me clip back in the tripod and I'll clip them together. One more thing in summary about the barrels, guys. What I'm saying is if you have an AR-15 that weighs 7.5 pounds, you have an AK, generally speaking, there's lots of variants and types of models out there, I know that. But if they both weigh the same weight, you're generally going to have a thinner profile on your AK-47. That, I haven't seen anything that breaks that formula yet. And I proved that to you, showing you that bushy that has that heavy profile carbine barrel on it that is basically almost a full inch underneath the handguard. So that's extra rigidity, it's more capability, more accuracy perhaps more sustained fire capability as well. Running out of time, let me introduce the next section on the weight concept, and that's going to deal with magazines. This is a standard 30-round Bulgarian mag, if I'm not mistaken. These AK mags, guys, are heavy. They're about 11.5 ounces, and if you compare that against an AR-15 standard Teflon-coated GI magazine, it's 3 times the weight, over 3 times. That's because the top magazine, the AR-15 mag, is about 4 ounces. Now, if you plan to carry 8 of these and maybe a heavy overt loadout like I've talked to you before, that's a lot of weight, additional weight that you're going to carry by opting to go with an AK system. Now, you can improve that situation by maybe running some polycarbonate versions like this Bulgarian one that I've shown you before, or maybe the Tapco waffle design. That will help a lot. So if you have chosen an AK system, really look at your loadout weight, because if you're running these steel mags, you're carrying a lot of weight. Albeit, I will say that if you get good steel mags, they're very reliable, extremely durable. You can basically run over them with a truck, and they're just going to keep on chugging away. But be advised, heavier. Another situation is the ammunition. I mentioned that in ballistics about how the 223, or let me call it 5.56 versus 7.62 by 39, is about half the weight of this round. That is another consideration, and we kind of already addressed that. So in terms of weight, the AR-15, in my opinion, that's all it is a data point for you guys to consider, is a more weight-efficient design, both in cartridges, in magazines, in barrel width, and barrel thickness, as we've discussed. So just some considerations under the weight talking point, and guess what? Totally out of time. That's end of part, what is this, 4? Part 5 coming at you. We'll pick it up with operation accuracy, blah, 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 all that other stuff. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about, but hopefully it's helpful to you guys. Nutnfancy, we'll see you next part.